Alright, what's going on everyone out there on YouTube, NES Ruler, and welcome to a brand new review. And this time we'll be checking out a film that was sent to me to review by Troma, and that is a documentary called VHS Massacre, Cult Films and the Decline of Physical Media. Now you're probably thinking when you heard about this documentary that this has a pretty cool premise and could be a pretty cool documentary, especially for us cinema lovers and physical media lovers. You know, I was extremely interested because films like Adjust Your Tracking and Rewind This, basically this follow VHS and the collector's market in VHS, and they don't really dive in physical media as a whole. And unfortunately, I have to say that I think those documentaries are more effective at what they're trying to do than this one. This one is very low budget. You could tell it was shot, basically just three guys who do a podcast. They grabbed a camera and they decided to shoot a documentary about physical media and cult films, and you could definitely tell that they didn't have that many resources to make a strongly polished documentary. And even Adjust Your Tracking, you could tell that those fellas didn't have the most money either, but they were still able to make something interesting and fascinating. And while this thing has some good things going towards it, I think it ultimately falls short because of their limitations. Now, I don't want to seem like a dick or a snob. It's just my personal preference that I think that there's some things that kind of annoyed me about this documentary. And I know I've gotten into a discussion with JP about it because he reviewed this one as well. And I think the biggest problem with this is that the film is broken up into sections, and it feels like I'm reading a book more than watching a documentary. Like, they'll talk about cult films, and there'll be a intertitle that says cult films, and then they talk about cult films for a while, and then there's another title card that will say Netflix, and then they talk about Netflix for a little while. And it feels very linear in that sense, and I feel like there's a better way to structure a documentary than using intertitles to break up your film. I think that they could have just had a nice screenshot of something that has to do with Netflix and having a voiceover from somebody, and then start talking about Netflix, and this having a title card come up on the screen that says Netflix and abruptly end the action from your previous segment. And I think that's where the film hurts the most. I know some people have a preference like that, but I just feel like it could have been used in a more effective way than just having the subject of that section pop up onto the screen. And another thing is that I feel like if they're going to talk about cult films and physical media, then I wish they would have had some interviews with some of these labels of these cult films who, they have Lloyd Kaufman, who's definitely the highlight of this documentary. His interviews are fantastic as always. Lloyd is a really entertaining person to listen to. But they don't really have anybody else from these labels. They don't have anybody from Severin or Synapse or Vinegar Syndrome or any of these smaller labels. And they're not that hard to reach out to, New York is a pretty big state where this documentary takes place. All you gotta do is grab your camera and go to a convention and you'll be able to talk to these people. And I think that's definitely where this hurts, that they don't have interviews with these labels that they're talking about in the film. I've written pieces when I was in film school about physical media. I wrote a pretty lengthy piece, and I was able to talk to these people. Given it wasn't a video interview, I just talked to them over the phone, but they're not that hard to talk to, and I wish that was part of the story. But like I said, it's an interesting premise, and the interviews are good with what they have. They have Joe Bob in here for a little bit. I wish they would have used more of his interview. I don't know how long they had to talk to him, but he's not really in it for that long. And you have Lloyd Kaufman's in this, and Debbie Rokan, of course, who is a legendary B actor who has been in a shit ton of stuff. But overall, I think that if somebody takes the time and develops a really interesting and complex documentary on cult films and physical media, I think it could be a really, really interesting and fascinating documentary. But I just feel like this one comes short based on technical limitations and the resources that these fellas had to make a documentary. Now, I don't think that you guys should totally pass it up. if you're into that kind of stuff like we are, I think it's something that you should watch because there are some positives going on throughout it, and it's not very long. You know, it's like 72 minutes or so long, so it's not that long of a watch. So I can't say that they overdid it, but I just feel like there's that intertitle thing really ruins it for me. And I know that some people aren't going to have a problem with it, but in my personal opinion, I think it hurts the film and it's a bit jarring, but it's interesting and it's a good try, and I guess you guys should check it out if you come across it for a cheap price or if you like documentaries. But, you know, this isn't one I would go and run out and try to pick up. But, like I said, this is a good package from Troma once again, as they always do. Bunch of features, bunch of interviews, and of course the classic intro from Lloyd that he does on a lot of these Troma releases. So, you know, it's okay, but I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't run out to pick it up. So that is my review of VHS Massacre. If you guys like this review, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/NESRuler22. Hope everybody's doing well, and I'll talk to you guys soon. See you guys.